As we always do, we're going to start off with some rapid fire questions. We'd like the audience to follow along, give us your answers as well.
Is climate change real?
Yes. Is law and order important for a democracy?
Yes. When you look at African countries and where they stand economically, do you think we should be blaming the Western world for interference?
Yes. Is obesity a real disease?
Yes. Should we give reparations to African Americans for what was done to them during slavery?
Yes. Would you, Platini, officiate a gay wedding?
No. All right, in the rapid fire round, I don't know if this was my second question or the third, but I ask you if you, when you look at African nations from a Western perspective, of course, and where they stand economically, how poor they are, do you think we should blame this on the Western world for their interference and the history with Africa?
Yeah, so it's a good question. And I was just actually recently reading an article about a gentleman who he was actually interviewed about this, and he was admitting exactly how Western nations operate, because he had been, I forget his exact title, but been someone who essentially was involved in colonizing parts of Africa. And what Western countries do with areas that they know are going to be areas such as areas in Africa that they know are going to have very valuable resources is they will reach out to these countries pretending to be offering support, right? And so they'll say, hey, we can give you a loan, right? And so they'll give loans to these countries that they know then are going to indebt these African countries to them. And then, also giving themselves rights to, building headquarters, businesses there, stuff like that. And basically, I mean, taking economic control of these countries that are less financially stable, less powerful, and that allows them to then steal their resources. And those countries, what are they going to say at the end of the day? Hey, give us our stuff back.
You're
No,
indebted to them.
you're indebted to
You
them.
use the resources as collateral.
And so we can't look at where African countries stand and where Western countries stand and just say, oh yeah, it's they all have their rights to do whatever. No, it's not a level playing field whatsoever. The West has intentionally taken advantage of these countries, and they have a direct impact on the economic health of those countries as well.
So do you think African countries are poor today by design? Poverty in Africa today is by design?
It depends on the country, right? I mean, I can't say every single nation within the African continent has had the same historical impact, but in some cases, yes. I think the West has intentionally influenced their growth in different ways. For example, I mean, the U.S. and other Western countries take a very direct role in elections. Some of those countries, they get in leaders who they specifically want to are going to work with our interests as Western countries. And so, yes, I guess. I mean, to your question, it's about controlling those countries, if those countries, the threat to Western power is that if those countries get too powerful and stable to stand on their own, that they're not going to need to give up all their resources to the West, and that would be a financial loss.
There will not be access and control from the Western world of African countries.
I think so.
So recently, a lot of African countries, especially the youthful populations, they have been treating Russia and China like the saviors Africa has been waiting for. What do you think about that?
I think that, I mean, any country is going to, now that China, first of all, they are obviously a superpower on their own. and are in direct competition um, for in many economic areas with the U.S. Any country at that level is going to try to use the same tactics that the West has been using, and so I think China's interest in Africa is the exact same
as the Western world.
as the West.
So
They want to get those resources.
these African youth should watch out for who they're letting in.
Yes, I mean, on one hand, yeah, I'm sure some of these African nations are looking for partnerships that they can build on. I mean, global partnerships. We're a global world at this point. There's
Well, man.
no country existing on their own. Everything depends on global trade, um, working with other nations. So I think Africa those nations have to find a way to do it that truly benefits them.
Okay.
They're at a clear disadvantage, an uphill battle for them because they're working from countries who clearly do want to take advantage of them.
So you don't think they should watch out for China and Russia? You think?
No, I do think they should.
Okay.
I mean, any country at all is going to have their own interests, obviously. And so, you have to, certainly as an African leader, as an African country, you want to make sure your country, your economic interests are benefiting for any agreement that you enter into. So I would be very suspicious of what China and Russia's interests are.
From an African perspective, Ben, I'm going to say the truth, and I'm going to keep it unfiltered.
Let's hear it.
Yeah. African nations cannot function economically without partners from the Western world or from the East.
Yeah, most countries can.
Yeah. So when I see a lot of Africans try to make it a case that African countries should try to be independent of any Western or Eastern powers, I think it is just borderline stupidity because it is impossible. We have the resources, but they're still in their natural state. And resources in their natural state, they don't really hold much value. You need the machineries to process them, and you need the expertise to help process them. We do not have these things.
Yeah.
Our system of education has not produced much of a productive population in the past years. So we are in a very complicated situation because we do not really have any bargaining chips. So when you talk about leveling the plane, negotiating on a level plane, it is impossible because where the United States stands today, Africa still have about 100 years to catch up to this level.
Well, it's so much of it is about the massive global infrastructure that you need to harvest these resources. So that's why you see companies like Chevron, massive oil and gas companies that are operating in those areas. And obviously, the African nations are getting something out of it. But at the end of the day, those are Western companies.
They're getting a very short end of the deal, and they don't have a choice. Because it is so bad that even production in Africa, it's still solely depending on the West.
Mm-hmm.
It's so bad that Africa still import grain to feed the population, even though we have probably one of the most fertile lands in the world. We import grain. I remember when Russia invaded Ukraine, over 8 African leaders left Africa. They went to Ukraine to beg Zelensky to let grain come to Africa because of starvation. There were at risk of starvation alarming around these countries. So they had to go to Ukraine to beg Ukraine to let grain come to Africa. So Africa is still in that state where medication, they still depend on the Western or Eastern countries. They still depend on the Western or Eastern countries for food. They import onions. Some African countries import onions. So that's the level they're still. We don't manufacture clothing. We don't manufacture anything. Africa has not even been industrialized. America has gone through the first industrialized phase. Second, third, we are now talking about AI, robotic, taking over America. And Africa is still standing without going through the first phase of industrialization. So we don't have any bargaining chips. So Africa is just a place with no rules that no one to watch out for, that anybody just gets to go in and do whatever they want. And it's very blessed naturally with resources. So as I see how China and Russia could play that into their advantage. And I also understand why African youth might want China and Russia to come in, because they have done it with the Western world. They have done it with France. They have done it with England. They have done it with Belgium, Italy. They have done it with the United States of America. And for some reason, it's just not working.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it's gonna feel in some way like a fresh perspective, a fresh start, and maybe a way out of sort of the colonial
Yeah. And mindset.
periods.
Yep.
But as I said, yeah, I would just caution that obviously China and Russia have their own interests in this, and that's to get at the
I
resources,
see it.
of course.
I see it clean and clear. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Yes. I asked you during rapid fire, is obesity a real disease? You said yes.
Yeah. Obesity is a disease. I mean,
Hmm.
medical wise, it is a disease.
So
Being overweight is a disease.
yeah,
I don't
but
think
as compared to say cancer, um, do you think what do you think the responsibility of individuals is in managing, preventing something like obesity, which, um, to put it plainly, in the unfiltered way, is just being intensely overweight, right?
yeah, that's obesity. Being overweight. Well, I think like it's there's a lot of diseases out here that we personally as individuals we try to prevent. Like if you hear there's a tuberculosis outbreak, you would try as much as possible not to be outside. If when we, during this Christmas period we had the flu all over the cities, you tried as much as possible to stay indoors so that you don't get infected. Obesity might not be on the same level as cancer, but it's a disease. And let's be fair, not all diseases are on the same level. But medical wise, it is considered a disease.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, it's
No, it is classified.
it's a disease. So you should do everything possible to keep yourself fit, eat the right food, and not get too fat. It's the only way I can put it.
Thanks, doctor.
Don't get too
You
fat.
heard it here first.
Yeah.
Don't get too fat.
Just don't get too fat.
Yeah. So, I mean, how do you think the... So, I mean, we talked a little bit in this episode. We touched a little bit kind of on
Diet
diet
on our previous episode.
and yeah, and even mentioning, I mean, the massive fast food industry. What role do you think that plays? Because despite being the most powerful, wealthiest country on earth, the United States has also become one of the most unhealthy.
It is one of the most unhealthy actually.
It is. It is. Even compared to, I mean, other Western countries around Europe, or
Europeans,
honestly, even compared to
Africa,
Asia.
Yeah, they eat better in Africa than here. It's surprising.
Yeah.
But they do. You know, Europeans laugh at us.
They what?
Europeans laugh at us.
Oh, yeah.
They say the average American is like 300 pounds. I'm sorry.
I mean, you can tell, right?
Europeans. Yeah. No, to be honest, we cannot leave it up to the government, and we cannot leave it up to corporate to control the type of food we eat. You know why? Because they are only worried about their interest. They are only worried about making more profit.
Yeah.
It is up to you as a matured person to know that shoving this down my throat will cause me more harm.
It is. I mean,
and it's up to you as an adult to watch out for your children and what they eat.
But don't you think, I mean, so you're saying it's an individual choice?
It's an individual choice.
To be aware. But I think the vast majority of Americans go into a grocery store, an average grocery store, let's say Cub Foods here in Minnesota. You're shopping for basic items like bread. Your assumption is that if you're shopping in a grocery store, that the basic essential things that you're buying are not harming you.
Mm-hmm.
That isn't the case anymore in this country, and that's, to your point, because of corporate interests. The only interest they have is to make things as cheaply as possible, as low quality, and to get the most out of them. And so
they want to maximize profit.
That's it. And so they're also working with, the sugar industry, adding sugar into every possible thing now. And but just ultra processed food is known to be the most harmful to human beings. Anything that's ultra processed, the less fresh it is, the more packaged it is, the worse it is for you.
And the longer it is on the shelves,
the longer it can stay on the shelf. Bingo. So these stores, they get the most processed possible foods, so they can set them on they won't expire too quickly. Majority of people don't know these things. And so don't you think there's a responsibility of the government to be regulating and saying,
absolutely,
we need to be keeping our citizens safe?
Yes, sir. It should be the responsibility of the government. But the reason I said as a mature individual,
Mm-hmm.
you should watch out for what you eat. Is because the government is not doing it,
Mm-hmm.
and to be honest, they will not do it. This conversation has been on the pipeline for how long? Over 20 years. They haven't done anything about it. Everybody has been complaining about food in America
Yeah.
for as long as I can remember. Nothing has been done. I don't even think it has ever made it even into Congress. I don't think it has even been tabled even once.
Well, I mean, a lot of issues have come before Congress. They just haven't. I mean, they've not been taken seriously for sure.
For sure.
But it's been getting. It's not. It's an existing thing, but it has been getting worse and worse.
So it is now up to us as individuals because this is your health, man. Apart from your spiritual beliefs, this is the most important thing you can ever probably do for yourself is take care of your body. Because if it breaks down here, trust me, whatever it is you think you're doing right now, whatever it is you think is giving you joy, is gonna convert to that primary state of just wanting to be healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And if you have ever been in the hospital setting, because I worked in healthcare and I'm still working in healthcare, you see how sick people are. And then when you get to talk to them and you see some people that can't even walk because of their overweight. And they're just looking at you like, if I could just walk down the hallway the way you do, all my problems will go away. You see that it's a responsibility. It's your responsibility to take care of yourself. That's all I'm trying to say. No matter what you do, watch what you eat, exercise more, and do not get fat, for crying out loud. Don't get fat. People will treat you differently when you're fat. I'm sorry, but that's the only way I can put it. People associate intelligence. They associate being responsible, being agile, smart, flexible, with being average size or slim. When you're oversized, they just think you're a slob. You don't take care of yourself. And they're not going to tell you in your face, but that's what they're thinking. That's exactly what they're thinking. Everybody looks at you, whether you're tall, whether you're short. The first thing they're looking at is if you're overweight or not. For the love of God, do not get fat.
Yeah. You heard it here first.
Do everything. Don't.
So, yes. And so what I would say along those lines, I mean, is you have to be, it's obviously more complicated than that. You have to be aware of the ingredients that you're buying, that even if you are cooking at home, trying to be healthy, if you're not buying ingredients that are safe for you and your family, you could be doing more harm than good. And so, yeah, the challenge that American consumers have now is actually finding foods that are safe.
Okay.
And we talked about this a little bit before.
You mentioned something about having a healthy section in the grocery store.
Right.
I think it was so funny to me.
Well, that's the interesting thing, right? If there's a health section in grocery stores now, what does that make the rest of the store? Right.
Yeah, you asked that question.
And what it makes it is unhealthy. But even calling something healthy is also an illusion, right? Because they label what does healthy actually mean, right? That's the question. They can label something. These companies can put any wording that they want on the front of a package, right? They can call it all natural. Those words have no meaning in the world of food. So be aware of that. The only part where food companies cannot lie is on the back of the label on the list of ingredients. And that's going to tell you actually what is in it. And so read those list of ingredients. The first 3 things are the most important. So if one of those 3 things on the list of ingredients is sugar or corn syrup or anything, a word that you don't understand, probably not safe to consume.
I think, okay, you're saying this from a place of someone that is educated. Most people don't even know.
It's a place of knowledge, of being informed. Yes.
Most people don't even know what that is. Even if they look at it, they read it, it sounds right in their mind, they still do not know what that means. They don't know the fundamental elements of any of those words. So they don't know what they're putting in their body. So I think we need to also take it back into the classrooms and give people food and nutrition education.
Yeah.
It should be in our curriculums of studies all over the country. In fact, it should be something that you do in your prerequisites in anything that you want to study in college.
Oh, no. Well, and here's the thing, right? The curriculum for medical school doesn't even include nutrition.
Are you kidding me?
Doctors don't even learn nutrition. At the most, they've tried to change this and pretend like they're teaching nutrition now, and so they offer maybe one course through 8 years of education. Doctors, that's not even what they're trained in. So people think, well, I should go to my doctor to get health advice. Your doctor doesn't know what's healthy. That's not what they learned. What they learned is they learned chemistry, biology, basic functions of the body, but primarily chemistry, because what they want doctors to be able to do is prescribe medicine.
These are chemicals, man. How can you give me chemicals to help me
Chemicals.
feel better if you
That's
don't
what
even
doctors
know
are qualified
what
to
my
do.
nutrition should be like?
Yeah. And the number one cause of disease is diet.
It's diet.
And so going to the doctor, we would hope, that they can help us understand how to prevent cancer or prevent these other harmful diseases. That's honestly not what they're trained to do. They're trained to treat it and maybe put you on a medication to help ease symptoms, but they're not even qualified to be telling
Prolong
you,
your suffering.
right, to keep you alive a little longer, maybe. But
That's prolonging your suffering, basically.
yeah, it's a system of, to close this conversation, let me give one example, right? We have this company, Monsanto, a massive corporation that runs, farming practices across the country, right? And so they profit by sort of monopolizing farming products and getting Congress to pass laws that says you have to use Monsanto products. So they sell products like Roundup, which have been shown to cause cancer, that farmers are supposed to spray on their crops. It's a chemical, right? That's I'm blanking on the term for it right now, but it's a chemical that prevents your crops from getting damaged from bugs or whatever. Not at all necessary in farming, but they want to make money off of it, so they're selling these
Is it
products.
like these pesticides?
A pesticide, yeah, thank you. So they profit from selling cancerous pesticides. This company, Monsanto, merged with, I believe it was Merck, one of these massive drug companies that sells drugs for cancer treatment. Can you imagine? So a farming company that causes cancer merged with a pharmaceutical company that sells a drug for cancer. So now they're one company.
That's criminal.
This is how the system works. It's designed to get us and keep us sick.
So it is coming from the very basic level, from the farm, all the way to keeping us in their care plan.
The system is designed to create and maintain sick people.
That's bad.
Which is, all we can do as the individual, like I said at the beginning of the episode too, right? You have to be aware of where you're shopping. You have to try to shop local farms, get your vegetables, everything, even your meat from these local farms. It's going to cost more, but it's going to cost a lot less in healthcare.
That's what we do. Most of us Africans here, we go to the farm, we kill our own chicken.
Well, that's the way to go.
We go to the farm and we get our own.
As long as it's not a chicken that's on antibiotics. But
that's the thing too, though. You never know which one is on. This thing is so fundamental. It's just going back. It keeps going back. If you really want to avoid this system, you want to avoid this, you might need to just make your own.
We have to move to Africa. Yeah, that's the only way to avoid it.
You got to become a farmer and make your own food.
Yeah,
from the farms, because you don't know what these people are giving these chickens.
Right.
Yeah.
A word to our sponsor, Unfiltered Farms.
Mm-hmm. Yes. That's crazy.
We're going to start a farm in Platini.
We'll start a farm. So you have to take care of yourself. You can't depend on the government or corporates. You have to watch what you eat and take care of your diet.
That's it.
Yeah. All right. My next question to you. I ask you if you think African Americans should get reparations for how they were treated during the slave trade period.
Yeah.
And you said yes.
I did say yes.
Please explain.
And so, just to give a basic level understanding, right? Reparations is a term used for, payment to those families that were brought to the United States as slaves, and after, obviously, they've been in the United States hundreds of years now, these families, and after what was supposed to be the end of slavery. In the 1800s, when slavery was officially abolished after the Civil War. Then these families, many of these freed slaves, then had to go off and attempt to build, provide for their families, build wealth, all of that. But it wasn't so simple. Since that time, those who have controlled the government obviously white-dominated government in this country for the past several hundred years, intentionally made laws to keep African Americans down economically. And so they made laws, for example, that African Americans could not own land. This was actual law, written into law by the government, saying that black people in this country were not allowed to own land. And that's historically how wealth was built in this country, is if you didn't own land, you were a nobody. There was a period when if you didn't own land, you weren't even allowed to vote, right? And so that's how wealth was grown and how it was passed through generations in this country was people who owned property. That's what gave you, that's what made you somebody. And so the African Americans in this country have been intentionally kept down economically. They've been prevented from gaining wealth and building wealth, even up until it's not even ancient history, right? It still happens in the system. There are ways of keeping those communities down. Funding doesn't go to those communities for their education. There's segregation, very harsh segregation, even in Minneapolis, by the way, and in other major cities where you wouldn't expect it. There's redlining, there's districting that intentionally puts people of color into certain areas of the city. And then because there's less resources there, they get less funding, they get less taxes. Less taxes are going to their schools. And so they have not the same education, not the same resources as other communities. Even in Minneapolis in the 30s, right? Less than 100 years ago, there was an ordinance passed that for example, scratch that. That wasn't an African American issue, but the point is, right, that these communities that have been intentionally held down economically are the result is clear, right? There's very much an economic imbalance between communities of color, which the only reason there are communities of color is because of intentional segregation.
Okay.
Right. And so reparations doesn't necessarily mean we just hand them some cash.
Okay.
Say, here you go. This is a payback, right? There could be different forms of that. There could be funds set up. There could be specific taxes used that goes into certain communities that happen to be historically black communities. So there have been ideas shared. There are very practical ways that we could institute reparations. And so that doesn't mean just cutting checks and handing them to black people and saying, here you go. It's more about funding. It's more about more equally funding certain communities. And that's how I believe reparations could be used. Now, it's such a controversial term, right? Because the angry white people in this country will get very riled up when they hear the word reparations because they think there's just free money being handed out. And they're saying, and to them, it's like, oh, well.
I like the fact that you kind of like touched on the part of the practicality of it because
it's very practical.
Yes, when we hear about reparations, most of the time, what we are hearing is cut checks and give it to black people that their ancestors were brought here during the time of slavery.
It's more about policy.
Yeah. So that is where I think most of our Caucasian brothers and sisters, they kind of get confused because we hear this, let's give every black man in America a $10 million check for reparations. And they're asking themselves where the money is going to come from, who's going to pay for it. Is it going to be taxpayers' money? Who exactly is going to pay for it? So that is always the question that I hear in that space. So talking about more practical ways to do this, it makes a lot of sense.
Well, and people are going to, people are going to argue, are going to whine, no matter what the thing is that we're trying to fund, whether it's funding, programs for the underprivileged, like welfare programs. In Minnesota, we have great programs like these, like the SNAP program that, allows for underprivileged families to be able to afford groceries and stuff like that. And so these people can lift, or these programs, can lift people out of poverty. So they have a very positive impact. Programs like that could easily be used to help communities of color who the reason these communities of color are struggling is because of the historical racism that has put them in this place. And when I say racism, as I said, it's actual laws that were preventing these communities from being able to build wealth and to get out of poverty.
So,
And so
to understand you clearly, you think the best way reparations should be done is to create programs that help even the plain when it
yes,
comes to community growth among all these segregated communities in America.
absolutely.
Okay.
And these programs, of course, will require funding. People always get riled up about any sort of social program because they think this I'm going to be paying for this. Like this is going to raise my taxes to help out these lazy people or whatever it is. First of all, we all depend on some level on the government. We all, you know, require things from the government. And also, just to give you a reality check, tax-wise, it's very minimal, the impact to our taxes, what goes towards these social programs. It's like maybe, in many cases, a couple of cents out of your paycheck to help fund some of these programs. And so I think a few of us can spare some change to help make the entire economy better, right? To make it, first of all, more fair and better for everybody, but also to, when people are lifted out of poverty, that is a positive impact on the economy overall.
Okay.
So that's not really raising your taxes. What's raising your tax? The majority of our tax money goes to corporate interest. Actually, it goes to a bunch of military funding and things like that, and funding the police, for example, resources that we all depend on. That's what our taxes pay for. And as we talked about in previous episodes, if the wealthiest, if the massive corporations were paying their share of taxes, we wouldn't have so much of that burden. But that's the way the tax code is set up in this country.
Okay. So you think reparations for African Americans is not unrealistic. It's more about how we approach it.
It's very feasible, very practical, and it could be done through public policy.
All right.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much, man.
All right. Last but not least,
Yeah.
on our questions for today, would you officiate a gay wedding, Platini?
I said no.
Mm.
No, hold on. Before everybody comes for my head.
Okay. Guess we're not going to get married today. This episode.
Yeah, no, I have no problem with what anybody decides to be or who they are with. That is none of my business. And I really, to be honest, I have no public opinion on these things. But for me, not being able to officiate a gay wedding, it's related to my culture. It has nothing to do with who the individuals might be or my opinion of them. Again, I have no opinion about that. I really do not care. So coming from a strong tribe in West Africa, very traditional and cultural person that I am, and having most of all of my family live still in our tribe today, I cannot put myself in a space that it will make it difficult for me to go back home. Yeah, it is just about how the people in my tribe are responding to that. It is not our way.
Sure.
It is not our tradition. It's just not in our culture for a man to marry a man or a lady to marry a lady. So even if
So you would be, if you were to engage in something in that ceremony, you would be literally alienated from your own family?
Not that.
Is that true?
I would be treated, there'll be a lot of questions. Yeah. And some people might not want to associate with me, but it will not be that bad. It's not like I'm going to be shown out of my family or not, no. But it will be a lot of questions, and some people might start treating me differently, which is something that I'm not willing to sacrifice. So if I was offered the opportunity to officiate a gay wedding, respectfully, I would have to turn it down. And I just hope anybody that listens to this gets to understand that cultures are just different. People are just different around the world. And like they always say, the old saying always goes, if you go to Rome, do what the Romans do. I'm now in America. I respect all the laws of the land. And if I see a gay couple, good for you. It's just not something that I would bring under my roof because of my own culture.
Sure.
and my own traditions. And again, we promote that in America to be who you are. So you wouldn't really walk up to someone from Afghanistan or someone from the Middle East and ask them to do this, right? Because of their culture. You already know that this is their culture. They're not gonna want them to do that. But respectfully, they would probably respect you, and they would really appreciate the fact that you even offered that they should officiate that wedding for you. That's the same with me.
So, as an American,
Yeah,
you respect and accept all people and their lifestyles.
absolutely.
But as traditions from where your family is from, you would not partake in that particular ceremony.
No, not like partake. You said officiate. That means I would be the one to join
Right.
it.
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah,
Yeah.
you would be a direct participant in that.
Yeah, I wouldn't. But if I was invited, I would put on my nice suit and come sit down, of course,
All right.
and have fun like everyone else. But to officiate it, I wouldn't.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I guess along those lines, right? Do you think there would be a time, because as American society has evolved, it's become obviously more and more progressive in many ways. That a gay wedding was not legal not too long ago. And
I was here when they legalized it, man. I was in Cameroon. I saw Obama do it. Yeah.
it became legal just recently. Do you think there would be a time if the natural progression of somewhere like Cameroon is to evolve? Do you think there would be a time they get to that level of?
To that?
Yeah. What do you think? Can you imagine it?
I'm sorry. It's just not. It's never gonna happen. The reason I laugh is because I've seen a lot of advocates for human rights. For example, our VP, our Vice President right now, Kamala Harris, made a trip to Ghana, and she was very serious about advocating for this. And I was just looking at Kamala Harris like, you really have no idea where you are, do you? It is not realistic. It's not gonna happen because, unlike America, where the only power is the law and the only power is the government, in America, we have another alternate power in Africa, which is kings, which is our fundamental traditions. Trust me, in a country like Cameroon, to even win elections and get into power, you have to first of all go and make sure the kings are with you, because these tribes have kings. We are more loyal to our king and our customs than the laws of our country. That's how it is in Africa. So with that being said, the laws of our countries, of our tribes, they are very specific. And they haven't even moved an inch in the past, I don't know for how long.
Sure.
As long as history can date back, they haven't moved an inch.
No, I mean, it's they stay very true to their traditions, to their roots.
I don't even see, it is no crack in the system, in those traditional systems. I don't even see how humanly possible that can be.
But do you also think there's an element of privilege to it? I mean, America is to a point in where the citizens are privileged enough that they can start thinking about or rallying for individual rights, things like these, versus a less developed country. They're worried about just feeding themselves or about and so it's not like they're concerned about what
human rights should be.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I think this all depends on perspective. It all depends on how you're looking at it. Because when you go to a country like where I'm from in Cameroon, people don't even consider this a problem. They don't even know it to be a problem. It's not that they're ignorant of it or any of that. It's just not in our reality. It's like our reality, that doesn't exist in our reality. And when they do see two people doing that, it is like everybody is against it. It's just not about the lawmakers of the land, traditional lawmakers of the land. It's not about that. Even if you were to go there and maybe you're a gay couple, you appear in Cameroon and you're holding hands, doing all of that in public, you will realize that even the general public will not want to associate with you. Yeah, and if you're not careful, they might even... Have you ever heard of jungle justice?
Jungle justice. What's that?
Jungle justice is a system of justice that they don't really leave it up to the government to pass the judgment. The public do it. If you commit a crime, the public just comes out, they beat the hell out of you. That's jungle justice. So that happens a lot in Africa. So the way it
Happens
happens,
here sometimes too.
really, because in Africa, where I'm from, if they catch you stealing something, and the law enforcement doesn't get there on time, before they get there, you will be already in flames. They roll out tires, old tires, put them over you, throw gasoline, and light the fire on you. That's jungle justice. So there are is like the public take the matters into their own hands. So if
Yeah.
they see a gay couple publicly in Cameroon, the public will take the matter into their own hands.
Yeah.
But some countries like Nigeria, there are rumors of some gay couples living in Nigeria, but I know they move differently. They don't move in public like that. Because if they do that in public, trust me, somebody that's just having a bad day is just gonna start slapping, beating the shit out of you. And before you
Yeah.
know it, other people will join in. So it's just something that is not in our reality, actually.
Well, and it's, I mean, in comparing, right? Because the United States is regarded as like this beautiful place where everything is accepted and welcome. That's somewhat of an illusion as well. I mean, yes, on certain levels we have very, very progressive areas and attitudes of the country, especially in certain major cities. But also a large portions of this country are not so on board, right? And so have not accepted this, especially if you go some areas down south, down in the south, small towns down there, small towns anywhere really.
Why are you going that far? Even here in the Twin Cities, a lot of people cannot stand it. I'm sorry, but I've, I've had I've had conversations with some people that were born here, they grew up here. For some reason, they're just like, yeah, they would never understand, but they will say it in front of you. And this is why I think shows like Unfiltered are very necessary, because these shows get to let people talk about the things that they wouldn't say in front of you if they think they're gonna offend you, which is not the way to progress the society. We can't push the society to just suppress the feelings of other people in the name of progression. We have to hear from everybody and see how we can make our cases and convince them
Yes,
fundamentally.
I agree. I mean, every one of us might have some messed up views on something.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, things that we don't understand are things that we are ignorant about,
And we fear
and
them.
yeah, exactly. We have fear of those things that we don't understand, and
We don't
that leads to irrational thinking.
Can be even catastrophic.
It can be bad, right? And so if we're not allowed in some way to express these feelings and talk with people who might be able to help us gain a better understanding, a more informed and a more knowledgeable comprehension of these ideas, then how can we improve ourselves, right? And so that is the reason for Platini and myself sitting down here today
And talking about
and having these discussions. That is the purpose of Unfiltered.
also, Ben, before we wrap it up today,
Yes.
there's something that I realized about interacting with a few couple of the same sex that I've met here in America.
Okay.
And here's the thing: most of them generally are very nice people. They are really, really
We're
nice
all
people.
humans at the end of the day.
I've
We're
not
all just
seen-
human beings.
I've not seen a gay couple that was not just incredibly sweet. But there's a but. They make everything about their sexuality. Most of them that I've interacted with them, they make everything about their sexuality. I I don't come to you and you yap about your sexuality to me all day. You don't talk like sometimes
Bye.
you might talk about who this person maybe you're having an affair with this person and that, but that's not all you capitalize on our friendship on. You get it? I was once
I'm not having an affair for the record.
oh no, it's just a
Just want to
conversation.
clarify that to the
it's
audience.
yeah. So I was once I was dating this girl. She was from the Dominican Republic, and she had I think it was her cousin that was gay. He was a guy, so we used to go to get out a lot, and we would get drinks. But all he would talk about was that. I wanted to talk about sports sometimes. Let's not focus on that. To be honest, I don't think most people like
think-
us that are not gay
Yeah.
really care that much about
Sure.
well, yeah, about your sexuality. We just respect it same as as we respect our own, and we don't try to make it the center of everything. But making it in a way that every time I have to make a statement, I have to be watchful or trying not to offend you makes me not want to be around you. And it's not because you're gay; it's just because you're just making everything so hard to be around you.
Well, yeah, I think where it gets too strict about what we are and are not allowed to say, that makes a lot of people anxious, right? I mean, I would say that, you know, once something has become accepted, that's the point at which it stops um, being such a spectacle, right? And
Mhm.
so, I mean, if your experience was with, some gay people was that that's all they could think about. I mean, I think that's likely because that was very liberating for them. If you can imagine hiding who you are for a large portion of your life, and then at some
Mhm.
point coming out to the world and being able to express that,
Mhm.
sure that's a very liberating thing, and it's something they want to
They want to share with you.
share and get used to expressing.
Yeah,
The more comfortable they get with it, I mean, I'm sure that
they would
uh,
stop.
they would get
They
it
would,
would just become a normal aspect of who
yeah,
they are.
yeah,
Um, Separately, I mean, your other comment I think is a separate point, which is
yeah.
that we have to be willing. I mean, we have to be willing to be patient with one another
Okay.
when it comes to conversation, because some of these issues have progressed very, very rapidly.
Mhm.
We went from, gay marriage wasn't even legal more than 10 years ago. Now it is. And since that time, the the LGBT community has rapidly progressed, and it's confused a lot of people, because a lot of us trying to keep up, right? Just trying to understand how we're supposed to be speaking, what the terminology is, all of these things. If you're getting, I want to be clear, like, if you're getting angry with somebody because they're not using the correct terminology, then I think you're not helping the issue, right? Like, no one's going to be perfect in understanding all of these things.
Right off
And
the
if you
bat, we
want
can know
people
it.
to be accepting, I think the wrong approach is to is to ostracize them for using the wrong term by
Mhm.
accident, right? I think, um, like I said, we have to try to understand one another and be patient and
I'm really
understand that
excited that
no human is perfect. It's everyone has to learn.
everybody have to learn, and we have to be patient with one another, like you rightly stated. And I'm really excited that you said you brought up this terminology
Hmm.
aspect of it, because growing up, you spend maybe your first 20 years just knowing sir, ma'am,
Right.
he, him, she, her, and now you're with someone that is your friend, and they don't want you to address them like that. It's gonna take you a while to knock that out. It's not gonna happen overnight.
Yeah.
You will get tongue slips that will make you call them.
It's an interesting world we live in
Yeah.
now. Yeah.
So
Because I do
they need to be
question.
patient with you to
I
get to
now
that
have a
point.
question in the back of my mind
Yeah.
when I say sir or ma'am to somebody,
Yeah.
because I grew up speaking that way, right?
Yeah.
Um, you know, my family originally from Texas, and so it's more sort of a proper way of speaking.
Yeah.
And to your point, yeah,
It's
nowadays
difficult.
it's somewhat unclear. Like, should I be using these terms? Because we do want to be accepting and
You want to address them the way they want to address, but
absolutely.
it's a lot of different pronouns now. It's so hard to keep up with each and every one of them, and you don't know which one to use for who. And even when you do know which one to use for who, because you've been used to using what you've been using all this time, it's very difficult to just switch it off like that. It just comes automatically.
It does. It
Yeah.
is automatic, and that's kind of the thing. It's what a lot of folks would say is, well, you should always just ask somebody. But it's not always that simple, right? I mean, if someone corrects you and said, this is what I would like to be called, perfect. Now I know. Um, it doesn't have to be a confrontational thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be I'm in trouble
And
because
even if
I
you say
accidentally
now
said
you know,
sir.
e-
But yeah,
even if you say now you know that they want to be addressed something else, in the middle of a conversation, your tongue might still slip because you have used to the one that you're used to.
yes.
And when that happens, please be patient with them. Just correct them again.
No, yeah.
Yeah, and
We're all human beings,
let them
right?
grow to that.
We're all human beings. As I consider myself a very progressive person,
Mhm.
as you know, accepting of absolutely everyone.
I'm very open. I'm learning, man.
Have
I'm very open.
very close friends, have had roommates
Mhm.
from LGBT community, etc. Um, but I, like anyone, can make that mistake, right? I was addressing somebody. I was in a conversation with somebody, and I think I said, "Well, he such and such," and they immediately corrected me mid sentence and said, "It's they." And it took me actually a second to even process what they meant. And
And it's gonna be it
I
took
was
you a
like,
while, right?
they what? You know, like I didn't even
Yeah, you
first
didn't even
register what they were talking about, you know?
hmm
And it's not, there was no obviously malicious intent on my part. It wasn't like I was trying to call somebody
No,
by the
you
wrong
wasn't.
thing, right?
You were just having a hard time
And so I think
rewiring your brain to think
it's
like that.
as, it's the same as any particular thing. Like, doesn't necessarily have to do with me, my sexuality, but if you know, if I want somebody to understand something about me as a person, I can't expect them to know that um, upon upon first meeting, right? I might
Mhm.
have to explain that to somebody.
Somebody.
Say, you know,
This is what it is, and you have to also
this
give
is
them time to get used to doing it exactly the way you just
yeah.
told them.
We have to have patience and
You see,
understanding with one another.
when I'm having a conversation with you, like not here off the cameras, it's just going. It's free. It's just natural. But when I get beside a gay couple and I'm talking, I always hold myself back. I'm watching everything I'm saying. It's like I'm just trying not to offend anybody.
Well, I don't think you have to do that. I mean, I think
I mean, I haven't really had a lot of experience. You have to understand that I haven't really had a lot of experience being around uh, our gay brothers and sisters. I haven't. So right now, I'm still at that phase where I'm still watching everything I have to say around them. Yeah. I'm still watching everything I do so that I don't get to offend them.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I would advise. I mean, you ask them. You can ask direct questions. I think that's the important thing to do. As we were stating, that's why you and I sit down here every week and discuss. Is because if we don't ask each other questions and try to understand, there's no learning, right?
Absolutely not learning
And we can't, yeah, we can't get past any of these issues if we're not willing to learn.
to learn.
And yeah, I'm perfectly willing.
All right.
I'm perfectly willing. I hope that our audience is willing as well. We would love to hear your thoughts on everything that we just discussed.
Absolutely.
We want you to come on this journey with us. That's what the purpose of Unfiltered is. As I said, this program is unscripted, unrehearsed. Platini and I just sit down here every week, ask each other questions, and give very candid and honest responses. That's the purpose of what we do here. So thank you for joining us once again. Please send us your feedback. Send us topics that you would like us to discuss on future episodes as well.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in today.
God bless.